Postmaster General Louis DeJoy claimed that he would halt all the operational changes that conveniently make it difficult for people to vote by mail at a time when people are more likely to want to vote by mail because of the pandemic. Now, as we've said before, Louis DeJoy is a huge Trump supporter, has donated millions of dollars to Donald Trump, and he immediately started to basically take certain mail sorting devices offline, which of course the post office would need in order to sort a huge influx of mail that's likely to come about as a result of mail-in ballots. We saw some evidence of mail drop boxes being picked up in various cities across the country. And so now he's saying, don't worry, there's enough backlash, and so I'm gonna stop. But he did not commit to undoing the damage that he's already done. So the Hill reports that the Postmaster General on Tuesday said that he would just pause these changes to Postal Service operations until after the election amid bipartisan outcry, a sharp reversal after Trump spent days defending DeJoy's actions. DeJoy said retail hours at post offices would remain unchanged, mail processing equipment and collection boxes would not be removed, and no mail processing facilities would be closed. Now, that's what DeJoy is saying, and even if he's being 100% honest there's still a huge problem with the fact that he is not committed to undoing some of the damage that's already been done. And so I'm much more trusting of the leadership for the Postal Union, and many of them have spoken out, and I want to share their perspective on this a little bit. So more than a dozen of these Postal Union leaders actually spoke to CNN and shared what they're experiencing behind the scenes. So first, let me just note that the original plan implemented by DeJoy would basically get rid of literally hundreds of mail sorting machines, 671 machines used to organize letters or other pieces of mail were slated for reduction in postal facilities this year. Now, when it comes to the union leaders, Miriam Bell is one of them, and she's the general president of a local chapter of the American Postal Workers Union in North Carolina. And she said that 7 sorting machines at a Charlotte postal facility have been either separated out, dismantled, or entirely removed in recent weeks. Bell says that she does not expect these dismantled mail sorting machines to be powered up in time for the election. So some damage is already done. Let me give you more. Roscoe Woods, president of APWU Local 480, 481, said a dozen machines at a distribution center in Pontiac, Michigan had been removed from service in recent weeks. And despite DeJoy's announcement, he said he has heard from postal management that the machines are not supposed to be put back to work. And by the way, let me also just be clear about one other thing. It has been a longtime dream of conservative Republicans and even some conservative Democrats to essentially dismantle not just machines within the Postal Service, but to dismantle the Postal Service altogether, right? To essentially privatize it and do away with it. And it's not surprising that someone like Louis DeJoy would want to do that because he has a vested interest in companies that serve as a competition to the Postal Service, or I should say the Postal Service serves as a competition to them because of the fact that the Postal Service is much cheaper. And so DeJoy says, look, I've already done some damage. I guess I'll stop for now. But I want to let you know what I plan on doing after the election. Here's a direct quote. I came to the Postal Service to make changes to secure the success of this organization and its long-term sustainability. I believe significant reforms are essential to that objective, and work toward those reforms will commence after the election. Well, one of the best ways to ensure that the Postal Service will remain sustainable is to do away with a ridiculous rule that forces the post office to fund pensions 75 years in advance. 75 years in advance. That was a rule implemented by the Bush administration for a very specific reason, to ensure that the post office would have a difficult time being sustainable. DeJoy has private interests here. He wants to do away with the post office so he can see a little return on his investment. And it's absolutely pathetic and sad that anyone would buy any of the arguments coming from these right wingers who do not have the best interests of Americans in mind. John.
Yeah, honestly, it feels like after all the outcry, all of what's come out that's been very obvious, and thankfully people working at the post office have talked about their experience and made it very clear. It would be like if you were infected by the coronavirus and it was ravaging you and you made a big stink about it. So it was like, okay, I'll pause. I was just trying to make you sustainable. No, but you're still there. You've already done the damage. The organs are possibly irreparably harmed for the rest of my life. It doesn't make any sense. And honestly, look, there's so many different ways to look at what he did in saying I'm pausing it. That is, I think, far more likely than, oh, sorry, that was my mistake and my bad. I didn't want to make you think that I was interfering with the election. So one is that it's simply a publicity move to help him get through the hearings that are about to come, and that there won't actually be a pause. Or it could be that there will be a pause, but it's a publicity move. And he realizes that even if the Democrats came into the House right now, guns blazing, they were like, we're gonna pass legislation. I don't know how they would fix all these problems in the small amount of time that we have. But even that amount of time is more than if he just waits 2 to 3 weeks and then starts doing it again. And I know that sounds ridiculous, right? I mean, there was this big stink. The news was talking about it. Let's say he stops for now. In 3 weeks, he starts pulling sorting machines again. What's gonna be done about it? Like realistically, based on the experience we've had over the past few years, what would happen? Nothing. One other alternative is that he can afford to pause it because he's done the damage that he intended to do, honestly.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I feel like both scenarios, of course, are disastrous. So on one hand, you can have him, announce that he's going to stop doing what he's doing, but he's probably going to continue because he doesn't have to worry about real consequences. Sure, he's going to have to participate in this hearing. And I'm glad that Democrats decided to get back to work at this moment of crisis, not simply because of what's happening with the post office, but I mean, we're still in the middle of this pandemic. Let me just remind all of you, I'm sure you already know because many people are feeling it in their personal finances, still no new round of stimulus, right? And so I'm glad they got back to work, and I'm glad that they're going to, at least attempt to hold him accountable. But they need to have the kind of attitude that Republicans had toward Hillary Clinton and Benghazi. There was nothing there, but they wouldn't let it go. It was clearly and obviously nothing more than political theater, but it was effective, right? And so I think if Democrats don't drop this topic and refuse to allow themselves to get distracted, then they could maybe ensure that people who want to vote by mail have the ability to do so. But right now I'm terrified because if you look at some of the polling, including a recent poll by CNN, there's a huge portion of this country that has bought into the messaging by the Trump administration, arguing that mail-in voting is not safe, that it's not a valid way to cast your vote. And so you need people to have faith in our electoral process in order to participate in that process. And so there's already all sorts of damage that's been done. And it is terrifying because, we're in a situation where it's not about winning because you're the better candidate that Americans prefer. It's about throwing the election and stealing it by playing all of these games with the post office and by planting these seeds in people's minds that the outcome of the election is not going to be valid because mail-in voting is it leads to a prevalence of fraud. And of course, we've shown various studies showing that that's not the case. But how much does that message get through?
Exactly. Yeah, and if in the end, if this is successful, even if let's say he's done for now, he's not gonna do any more damage. We don't know how much damage he's already done. If it's a close election, we'll never know, honestly, if it was what swung it. And even if someday we could find out in some way, which we won't, it wouldn't matter, it wouldn't reverse it. Like once the damage is done, once an election is swung, that's it. It's such a horrible situation. So one of the reasons we talked to JR and I on the damage report this morning about, I get why people are saying things like, if Trump wins, American democracy is over. I get the inclination, and certainly there will be a lot of damage done, but it doesn't take his reelection for him to have done significant damage. That damage is already here. And I don't want to give people the idea that if we can just stop him, then we're good. No, things have been wrecked top to bottom. And we're seeing that DeJoy, the fact that he has no fear whatsoever that he's gonna be significantly harmed, but he's gonna be locked up. No, there's gonna be no consequences for him. There are no consequences for anyone anymore. Even if somehow they found emails laying out in 100% detail what they're gonna do and why they're gonna do it, What's the best we could hope for? Trump pardoning him? Like honestly, like people still have this idea that we have the system we did 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. We don't. Nothing really counts anymore. Nothing really matters. This is one chance to potentially start to reverse a bit of it.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.